Everyone, my name is Andrea Reyna Niesa, and I will be reporting about the information processing theory. Information processing theory is a group of theoretical frameworks that address how human beings receive, mentally modify, remember information, and how such cognitive processes change over the course of development. And it is the approach to the study of cognitive development evolved out of the American experimental tradition in psychology. And development psychologists who adopt the information processing perspective account for mental development in terms of maturational changes and basic components of child's mind. So, the theory is based on the idea that humans process the information they received rather than merely responding to stimuli. This perspective uses an analogy to consider how the mind works like a computer. In this way, the mind functions like a biological computer responsible for analyzing information from the environment. And there are four pillars of the information processing model, and this is thinking, analysis of stimuli, situational modification, and obstacle of evaluation. Thinking. It is the process of thinking includes the activities of perception of external stimuli, encoding the same and storing the data so perceived and encoded in one's mental recesses. Analysis of stimuli. This is the process by which the encoded stimuli are altered to suit the brain's cognition and interpretation process to enable decision making. And there are four distinct sub-processes that form a favorable alliance to make the brain arrive at a conclusion regarding the encoded stimuli it has received and keeps stored. And this is encoding. It is if someone asks you what you ate for lunch today, more than likely you could recall this information quite easily. This is known as automatic processing or the encoding of the details like time, space, frequency, and the meaning of words. We get information into our brain cells through process, and it is called encoding. Second is strategization, generalization, and automatization. Next is situational modification. This is the process by which an individual uses his experience, which is nothing other than a collection or stored memories to handle a similar situation in future. Obstacle evaluation. This step maintains that beside the subject's individual development level, the nature of the obstacle or problem should also be taken into consideration while evaluating the subject's intellectual, problem solving, and cognitive acumen. Next is the structure of the information processing system, and this sensory memory, working memory, and long term memory. Sensory memory is formation is received through a person since it comes to the environment around you by Devet and Ormond 2004. So, stimuli from the environment are processed first in sensory memory. Storage of the briefest sensory events such as sights, sounds, and taste. It is very brief storage, essentially long enough for the brain to register and start processing the information. So, sensory memory can hold visual information for about half of a second and auditory information for a few seconds. So, unlikely other cognitive processes, it seems that sensory memory does not change from infancy. And it also holds information associated with the senses. Example given, vision, hearing, just long enough for the information to be processed for the mere seconds. So, sensory register detects visual, auditory, haptic, or touch, smell, taste, temperature, pain, body position, information, and filters out much of the world's potential information. Limited capacity, seconds before decay, and unconscious. And next is working memory or short term memory. So STM function as a temporary working memory whereby further processing is carried out to make information ready for long-term storage or for a response. And where information is processed and problem solving occurs, the working memory usually only processes things for a short period of time, and it is a temporary storage that system that process incoming sensory memory. Short-term memory is the bridge between information taken in true sensory memory and the more permanent storage of information in long-term memory.
Hello everyone. So my topic for today is all about information processing theory in working memory. STM or short-term memory function as a temporary working memory whereby further processing is carried out to make information ready for long-term storage or for a response. Holds information for a limited amount of time and holds a limited amount of information where information is processed and problem solving occur. So the working memory is also known as short-term memory or STM. It is a process whereas it stored an information in a short period of time by using of filtration from the sensory system. Example, the STM can be used to remember a phone number that has just been recited. Another example is if you're watching my video right now, my voice right now in the picture of the screen is in your short-term memory. It holds about 7-digit information small capacity. The next is it is the process of taking a memory from your short-term memory and storing it into our long-term memory is called encoding. Encoding, it is a recast sensory information into meaningful representation suitable for manipulation using strategies like rehearsal, organization, elaboration. So, these are the learning strategies on how to encode short-term memory to long-term memory. So first, rehearsal. Attempting to learn something by repeating it over and over, also called repetition. So, for example of rehearsal is by memorizing. The information we read, we use to repeat it more than once in so that the information that you need to get will be encoded into our long-term memory. And the next is organization. Attempting to learn something by identifying relationship among pieces of information as a way of categorizing them. So, organization, it is a classifying information to a sequence of terms. It includes categorization, listing, and group of information by noticing relationship among different items. Existing memories are encoded differently in organizational encoding. The next is elaboration, embellishing on new information based on what you already know, using prior knowledge. So, simply relating new information to our prior knowledge. It is where combination of our old and new information about something. The next is environmental factors. Example, culture affect the kinds of strategies that children develop. Children are more likely to use effective learning strategies when teacher and other adults encourage their use or when it is culturally meaningful. The next is long-term memory, where the information remembered over time is kept. There are many ways that information is moved from working memory into long-term memory. Represent our permanent storehouse of information capable of retaining an unlimited amount and variety of information. So, the LTM or long-term memory, it is where the information remembered over time is kept. And also, for example, everything that happens in our life, it was stored in our long-term memory. And it also represents the long-term memory as our permanent storehouse of information. So this is the information processing model. First, the information is filtered from our sensory memory. So, our sensory memory is everything we can see, hear, feel, or taste in a given moment. From there, we process the information further. Some of the information we hold in our short-term memory is discarded or filtered away using the selective attention, and a portion of it is encoded or stored in our long-term memory. A number of factors impact how we process things in our working memory. These include our individual cognitive abilities, the amount of information we're being asked to remember, how focused we're able to be on given day, and how much of our attention we give to the information. We also have the ability to focus on the information we deem to the most important or relevant. Then we use selective processing to bring our attention to those details in an effort to remember them for the future. And the unattended information is lost if it is unimportant stuff. For example, the noise. The next is the repetition. It is the crucial factor here if we want our trainers to transfer crucial information from their short-term memory into long-term memory storage, we must repeat it more than once, and the unrehearsed information will lost. To make the short-term memory become LTM memory or long-term memory, we encode it by rehearsing and elaborating, and some of the information may lost over time, and we can use LTM into our short-term memory by retrieval. That is the process on how the information was stored from the sensory input to our short-term memory, where is it stored information in a short period of time, and by rehearsal, it encode information to long-term memory. The next is the long-term memory or LTM. It is the ability to remember information in LTM appears very early and improve with age. Children increasingly have conscious awareness of the past. Infantile amnesia, general inability to recall past events during the early years of life. So, the infantile amnesia, it is the ability to recall the memories of our past. For example, the early months or days of our birth, we don't have enough memory to recall what we did in the time. The amount of knowledge stored in LTM increases many times over. The next is knowledge based. Once knowledge about specific topics and the world in general. Semantic memory. So it refers to the knowledge about factual information such as the meaning of word. Semantic memory is independent information such as information remembered for a test. So, for example of semantic memory is understanding how to put words together to form a sentences. So, the semantic memory is the recollection of facts. So, another mean of semantic memory is recollection of facts gathered from the times we are young. For example, knowing that grass is green, and how to use a scissors, just like that. So, uh, it is the facts how we gathered information the time when we were young. The next is semantic memory, facts and generalized information, principles, problem solving, and learning strategies. So schema or schemata, networks of connected ideas or relationship, data structure or procedure for organizing the parts of a specific experience into a meaningful system like a standard or stereotype. So, the schema or schemata describe a pattern of thought of behavior that is organized categories of information and the relationship among them. So, for example, as what I said earlier, on how the young girl creating their new schema about the cows. So, first, she thought that the cows, that the horse is like a cow, that the horse is like a cow. So after that, someone told that it was different. So the girl create a new schema about the cows and about the horse. Another example: think a house. Think of a house. You probably get an immediate mental image of something out of the kids' storybook, that which is the house that have four windows, front doors, and etc. The next the next is proposition, interconnected states of concept and relationship. If then statement, smaller unit of information that can be judged true or false. So the proposition will be judged if the statement is true or false. The next is script, declarative knowledge structure that captures general information about the routine series of events or a recurrent type of social events such as eating in restaurant or visiting the doctor. The next is frame. Complex organization including concept and visualization that provide a reference within which stimuli and action are judged, also called a frame of reference. So, the frame of reference, it is the stimuli and action are judged. The next is scheme. An organization of concept, principle, rules, and etc. that defines a perspective and present specific action patterns to follow. The next is program. Set of rules that define what to do in particular situations. So the program, it is defined on what to do in particular situation. Next is paradigm, the basic way of perceiving, thinking, valuing, and doing associated with a particular vision of reality. The next is model, a set of proposition or equation describing in simplified form some aspect of our experience. Every model is based upon a theory or paradigm, but the theory of or paradigm may not be stated in concise form. Third type of explicit memory, which is autobiographical memory. It refers to the knowledge about event and personal experience from an individual's own life. So, the autobiographical memory, it is the memory for one's personal history. So example, the first time learning to drive a car and even such memories as where we were born. That's all in my report. Thank you.
My name is Manonte Padilla, BSN Math 1B. Procedural memory involves memories of the body movement and how to use an object in the environment. Riding a bicycle, tying your shoes, and cooking an omelette are all examples of procedural memory. Implicit memory refers to use of object or movements of the body such as how exactly use a pencil, ride a bicycle. Priming is an implicit memory effect in which exposure to a stimulus influences a response of a later stimulus. It can occur following perceptual, semantic, or conceptual stimulus repetition. Example of priming is if people see an incomplete sketch, they are unable to identify and they are shown more of the sketch until they recognize the picture. Selective attention refers to the learner's ability to select and process certain information while simultaneously ignoring other information. For example, number 1, listening to favorite podcast while driving to work. Number 2, having a conversation with friends in a crowded place. Number 3, riding your book on a public transport bus. Rehearsal is the process where information is kept in a short-term memory by mentally repeating it. Example, when someone gives you a phone number verbally and you say it to yourself repeatedly until you can write it down. Chunking is the process by which one can explain his or her ability to remember things in the short term. Chunking is also a process by which a person organizes material into meaningful groups. For example, a phone number sequence of 4, 7, 1, 1, 3, 2, 4 will be chunked into 471324. Retrieval of information from long-term memory. The process of retrieval from long-term memory involves bringing to mind previously learned information. For example, writing an answer on a essay exam often involves remembering bits of information and then restructuring the remaining information based on these partial memories.